Hello, Rembrandt. Please endeavor to adhere to the established boundaries. We are not educating art students. We are training combatants. Seal instructor's condescending voice reverberated across the asphalt, its tone sharp and serrated. Chorus of nervous chuckles reverberated off the recently painted barracks wall as the throng of trainees, lean and hungry in their fatigues, offered a chorus. The woman, who was the object of derision, did not respond. Her concentration was unwavering. A study in silent competence as her brush moved with a slow, deliberate grace, laying a perfect line of beige paint along the doorframe, but across the training ground. She observed the entire exchange from the shaded balcony of the command building. Admiral Hayes' gaze was fixed on the woman as he leaned forward, his attention not on the instructor or his pupils. He observed the profound silence she wore like armor, the economy of her movement, and the methodical calm. Subsequently, he observed a brief burst of dark ink on her wrist as she turned to submerge her brush. His body remained immobile. Type. Earned in the field below, if you believe that respect is earned, not demanded. This scene was not an ordinary day at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Corona. It was a crucible, a location where personalities were forged and shattered in the face of the unforgiving anvil of elite standards. The air was transformed into a shimmering haze as the sun pounded down. However, the woman appeared to exist in a cocoon of professional, chilly calm. Her world was reduced to the task at hand, rendering her completely immune to the casual malice of the man who was strutting before his class. A monument to his own perceived grandeur, Chief Petty Officer Thorne was the instructor. He had the voice that had been sandblasted by years of bellowing orders over engine roar and gunfire, and he was built like a piling. The woman to him was a civilian nuisance and an obstacle in his sacrosanct space of warrior-making, he observed a painter. And that was all. Infuriating lack of deference, soft palms, and a nondescript jumpsuit were all visible to him. He yelled, "Trainees, look here!" and gestured with a disdainful flick of his hand. This is the consequence of losing concentration. You ultimately become employed as a door painter. No, there is no intensity. It is simply taupe. In his lecture on Marshall's superiority, he was performing, employing her as a prop to illustrate his perspective on the world's hierarchy. For him, reticence was an admission of inferiority. It was the grand spectacle of his SEAL team, the background characters, and the silence of the unimportant. He was unable to discern the truth. He overlooked the fact that her silence was not devoid of meaning. It was entirely occupied. He was unable to perceive the discipline that was present, an intensity that had been cultivated by pressures he had never encountered. He dismissed her hands as soft, but they were the hands of a surgeon who had been trained to perform tasks in which a tremor of a single millimeter could mean the difference between a clean success and a calamitous failure. Her composure was not indicative of passivity. The loud, blustering world of men like Thorne simply ceased to register as a threat, as it was control, a dominion over self that was so complete. The moment of reckoning did not appear with a bang, but rather with a panicked whisper over the communications. The primary exercise of the day, sophisticated shipboarding simulation against a full-scale metal mock-up of a freighter hull, came to a halt. A training device, which was a simulated limpet mine with a hyper-realistic timer and magnetic restraint, had malfunctioned. It was affixed to the opening. Its digital countdown has been halted at 17 seconds. Also, the emergency release protocol was ineffective. It was a lifeless stick, inert, but its failure was critical. The multi-million-dollar exercise was rendered inoperable. The recruits of Trident Team 7 were perplexed. A group of agitated civilian engineers were conversing in circles, proposing a complete power outage that would require hours or brute force. Thorne's expression became increasingly bitter. The theater of controlled pandemonium that he had meticulously orchestrated had spiraled into a genuine embarrassment. The woman methodically placed her paintbrush across the top of the can. From across the yard, her movements were methodical and unhurried as she wiped her hands on a clean cloth. Each action was deliberate, a single note in a symphony of practiced efficiency. Her soft-soled footwear made no sound on the hot asphalt as she began to walk towards the source of the commotion. In a state of increasing dread, she was advancing towards the epicenter of the failure. However, she emanated an aura of unwavering tranquility. "Do not move, madam." Thorne's authority was already eroding as a result of the failure, as he declared, "This is a technical issue." He perceived her approach as an intrusion, as another civilian was obstructing the situation. She refrained from responding. She did not even glance at him. Her attention was captivated by the inert device that was grasping onto the steel hull. A silent wave of bewildered respect for her sheer audacity washed over the trainee as she parted before her. Her gaze traced the seams of the device casing as she kneeled. Her hands, which Thorne had ridiculed, hovered over the surface, not contacting it, but sensing it. The engineers observed in bewilderment. They possessed diagnostic instruments, tablets, and schematics. She possessed only her irises and an unsettling tranquility. She observed what they had overlooked. It is not a software malfunction. Rather, it is a physical defect. A hairline stress fracture in the vicinity of the magnetic actuator housing. Unobservable to the untrained eye, she indicated that location. She spoke quietly, but clearly, her first word of the day. She then removed the weathered wooden handle of her personal putty knife from her pocket. She refrained from inquiring. She refrained from scraping. She repeatedly struck a specific point on the casing. Once, twice, and 3 times. The strikes were precise, rhythmic, and a calculated application of vibration rather than forceful. The sudden, deafening stillness was punctuated by a sharp click. Darkness enveloped the device's digital timepiece. With a pneumatic exhalation, the magnetic clamp was released. The mind transitioned from the hole to the trainee's waiting palms. The crisis that had perplexed a team of specialists was resolved in a mere 5 seconds. Thorne could only murmur, "That is impossible." "Admiral." Hayes entered that stunned stillness. He moved with the quiet purpose of a man who owned every inch of the ground on which he stood. He did not gaze at the device, the relieved trainees, or the humiliated engineers. He proceeded directly to the woman who was already turning to return. To her painting, he addressed her as "ma'am," and the phrase resonated like a thunderclap. An admiral does not address a contract painter as "ma'am." The face of Chief Thorne was a canvas of confusion and dawning dread as he snapped to attention. The admiral pointed to the tattoo on her wrist, which was now readily apparent. The symbol was intricate, resembling a trident, and it was the insignia of the Navy SEALs, piercing the center of a stylized sea mine. A set of coordinates is situated beneath it. I have not encountered that marker since Operation Resolute Trident. The entire compound was subdued by the admiral's low voice, which was tinged with reverence. It was known as the mission's chief technician. When a foreign submarine's reactor shield became critical off the Azores, they dispatched an individual to operate in the deep sea. The individual they referred to as the surgeon was gazed upon by a Thorne. A frigid fire blazed in his eyes. Your assumption that she was a painter was based on the fact that she was holding a paintbrush. You inferred that she was vulnerable due to her gender. You inferred that she was insignificant due to her silence. The admiral directed his address to the Trident Team 7 trainees, who were wide-eyed. His voice was transformed into an instrument of instruction, with each word serving as a meticulously crafted lesson. He stated that this is Master Technician Eva Rostova, pointing not to the woman but to the space she inhabited. Her official title is Civilian Advisor to Naval Ordnance Development. However, this title serves as a substitute for a reality that none of you have the authority to access. The weight of the revelation caused the air to become increasingly dense. The unseen file is listed by the narrator's voice, which appears to take over. Unit designation, Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal, and Deep Sea Special Operations. Field speciality, Improvised Nuclear and Chemical Device Disablement, Medals, and Commendations. The Navy Cross is awarded for actions that occurred during Navy, a mission that will never be declassified. A Presidential Unit Citation, 2 bronze badges of valor. She was not merely a veteran, she was a legendary figure. A phantom emerged from the most perilous and profound waters where SEALs were incapable of venturing. She was first-hand observing the field trials of the device she had assisted in designing while on this base. Incognito. Admiral Hayes returned to Rostova. The two-star admiral, a man who commanded fleets, raised his hand in a slow salute in front of Thorne, the trainees, and the world. It did not constitute a protocol gesture. It was an act of profound personal respect. Ivastova merely nodded in acknowledgement. The gesture served as sufficient confirmation for all parties. The narrative of the painter and the putty knife did not merely disseminate. It exploded.
It propagated through the facilities in a manner reminiscent of a shock wave, traversing from the mess halls of Coronado to the secure forums of the Special Operations community. It was transformed into a legend, whispered with a combination of cautionary dread and awe. The surgeon's tap, or more colloquially, getting painted, was a new piece of institutional slang that referred to the act of being profoundly humbled by an assumption. Chief Thorne did not attempt to conceal or redirect. The following morning, he discovered Eva Rostova by the same barracks door, applying a second coat of beige with the same infuriating magnificent serenity. He maintained a respectful distance from her and awaited her completion of her stroke. He was devoid of arrogance and bravado. He was devoid of substance and prepared to be replenished with a more beneficial lesson. "Ma'am," he said, his voice lackluster and devoid of its customary confidence. "I am grateful." It was not an apology, rather, it was a recognition and admission. He then inquired whether she would be amenable to discussing the nature of silent professionalism with his apprentices, rather than ordnance. She interrupted her work, gazed at him for the first time, and offered a single unambiguous assent. Her lesson was not a lecture. It was a demonstration. She did not occupy a podium. She led the trainees to the freshly painted wall. She instructed them by employing the resources of her cover. She demonstrated the necessity of a stable hand in order to achieve a flawless paint line. Indeed, but it necessitates an initially tranquil disposition. She demonstrated that the ultimate application of paint was less significant than the preparation of the surface, sanding, cleaning, and priming. The instant of action is not as critical as the preparation for a mission. She induced them to regard the door as a system of components, each with its own strengths, weaknesses, and tolerances, rather than as a mere door. "Thorne instructs you on how to penetrate the door," she stated, her voice soft yet authoritative. "I instruct you in the understanding of the door, the lock, the hinges, and the frame, so that you no longer require a battering weapon. A touch is all that is required." The lesson was profound. It was a matter of competence over brute force, intellect over aggression. Subsequently, the modest putty knife was encased in a compact glass display within the EOD training facility. It was not positioned alongside the trophies of conflict, but rather among the tools of learning. Her name was not inscribed on the diminutive brass plaque that was situated beneath it. It stated, "Knowledge is the appropriate instrument. Experience is the appropriate approach. The correct assumption is, there is no assumption." A year later, the Naval Special Warfare Center's culture had undergone a subtle yet significant transformation. The painter's legend was now a standard issue for all new classes that arrived at Coronado. The parable, which Chief Thorne himself delivered, was the first story they heard. His instructional manner had been transformed. He continued to enforce physical excellence, however, he now advocated for intellectual rigor and situational humility with an even greater passion. He instructed his SEALs to seek out the quiet professional in the room, to revere the unassuming, and to recognize that the most dangerous individual in a conflict is frequently the one who is not noticed. The diagnostic and problem-solving phases of their training experienced a nearly 40% decrease in the rate of failure. A training module that prioritized cognitive finesse had been formalized from Eva Rostova's informal lecture on comprehending the door. Her presence on the base became a living symbol of this new philosophy. She would occasionally be observed in her uniform, observing equipment trials. Her silence serves as a poignant reminder that genuine fortitude does not necessitate public declaration. Her legacy was not encapsulated in a single act of impossible talent. It was in the enduring transformation she spurred. A ripple effect of competence that enhanced the wisdom and strength of combatants. A inert monument is never a true legacy. It is not a name inscribed in stone or a metal pin affixed to a uniform. It is a living principle, a standard of excellence that is transmitted, refined, and perpetuated by subsequent generations. Eva Rostova's legacy was not limited to the deactivation of a singular device. It was the activation of a new mindset in a generation of exceptional warriors. The concept that worth is demonstrated through action, rather than assertion, was exemplified by her calm confidence. She commanded respect without ever requesting it. The narrative functions as an enduring reminder that ego is the adversary of expertise and assumptions are the enemy of awareness. The quiet professionals, surgeons, and painters are responsible for the construction, maintenance, and protection of the world, rather than the loudest voices in the room. This is achieved through the use of steady hands and serene minds. The individuals who comprehend the complex mechanics of reality and have no patience for the theater of presumption. They are the unseen architects of our security, content to be assessed solely by the mute perfection of their work. To read additional stories in which modest competence triumphs over loud assumption and silent professionalism defines their value, please subscribe to Unsung Silent Stories. Kindly.